welcome everyone to our small business webinar series. My name is Sahara Lake and I'm the programs manager at the Tory Burch Foundation. Today's webinar is titled Email Marketing, Finding the Right Words. And I'm so excited to be joined by two of our experts today, Joanna Wiebe and Raj Hodgkiss. I'm going to just read their bios to introduce them. I'm sure they will introduce themselves further later on, but Joanna is the CEO of Copy Hacks, which provides conversion copywriting, marketing courses, and resources for freelancers, copywriters, startups, and marketers. She's 20 years of experience in this field with digital marketing, UX copywriting, direct response, and persuasion. She and her team have crafted conversion copy for hundreds of fast growth startups and brands, including MetaLab, Nectar, and Shopify. And Roz is the customer experience programs manager at Campaign Monitor, which is a global technology company focused on email marketing and also the sponsor for our small business webinar series. So we want to thank Campaign Monitor for their generous support. Roz has been in this field for 15 years, has 15 years of experience in the email marketing industry, and has been ranked as a top email marketing thought leader by Litmus. And so we're thrilled to have both Joe and Roz here with us to teach us how to write emails that both increase customers and increase sales. So while we're doing the presentation today, continue to use the chat function, but if you have a question, please use the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring that during Joe and Roz's presentations, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can during the Q&A. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joanna to get us started.
Hello, thank you so much. Thanks for that great intro. Hi, everybody. Great to see all the chats coming in. I think I saw somebody has a spa for kids, which is like amazing. What kind of world are we living in that we get spas for kids? It's wonderful. So lots of other cool businesses too. Like there were so many running by. So it's very cool to be here. We love at Copy Hackers working with startups, helping people who are, bringing their own dream to life and to the market to actually get to market. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm not going to talk too much about myself. We have a lot to share with you today. So you should be seeing that now. And I will depend on anybody on the Tory Burch team, Tory Burch Foundation team, if you're not seeing something the right way. I can't currently see your chats, but if you have anything, I assume I'll be interrupted with like important notes. So today, we are going to talk about writing emails. So I've got a bunch of slides to get through, a lot of things to share with you. You can find the slides here. I know that will be chatted out, that bit.ly. It's all lowercase, just to be clear. It's a bit.ly jw-ch-tbf. So Joanna Wiebe, Copy Hackers, Tory Burch Foundation. That's where it's all coming from. So it does make sense. All right, we're talking about writing emails. And I know that I've been teaching how to write emails since a couple of years after I learned how to write emails, because there's so much interest in this. And of course, we've been learning the whole way since, doing a lot of testing. But the thing that often comes up is like, great, yeah, email's good, but I've got all these other things to do. So the real question, like to kind of start with is, is email like even worth my time? And I'm going to argue that indeed, yes, it is. A couple things you may have already seen, some stats, they're pretty popular. For every dollar you spend on email marketing, you can expect an average ROI of $42. So kind of a solid investment, and greater than 80% of small businesses use email as their primary, not just customer acquisition, but also retention channel. So this is great for attracting customers, but also keeping those customers. All right, so email's good, but so are other things, right? So what about all the other marketing stuff? Well, 4 out of 5 marketers say they would rather give up social media than give up email marketing. It's a really big deal. It's a growth engine. It is, in a lot of cases, how you generate revenue. One email send can bring in revenue that could, depending on when you send it, it could last you an entire year. I know we do that with our Black Friday, Cyber Monday emails. It gives us all the money we need for the entire year with a couple email sends over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So this is a particularly good time to talk about emails too, if you're thinking of doing a BFCM promo. Lots of daily email users. There are lots of other stats and benchmarks and things out there that I encourage you to go look at if you're ever like, But should I spend time on this? You should. Here's why: there's lots out there. Okay, so we're going to talk about actual steps to write those emails. What can you do? And of course, we're talking about increasing customers and sales. It's what email is incredible at. But the best way to do that is to make sure people actually love your emails. And we'll talk about how to get them to do that too. But think about, I can write emails people love. Like that might even be a bit of an eye opener for you. Like people actually like getting my emails. That's a possibility. People can like that. So we are going to jump in. I always have way too many slides ready to go for a talk. So we are sharing out those slides in case I run through something too quickly. I also have a timer going. You might see me glancing down every so often because I tend to run straight up to the end of my time. But we do have time at the end for a Q&A if you have any questions you want to write down. Okay. Let's dive in. What's the first step, Joe? What's the first thing that we want to do to make sure that our emails are going to get us more customers, get us more sales, and of course, in the end, help us keep more customers too? Number one, you got to get in that inbox. That's a big, big deal. And it can be kind of scary sometimes, depending on how big your list is right now. If you're like, oh, people aren't opening my emails, is it even worth trying to do more with email? It is. If you're like, the way your email's been working hasn't really been working, then now is a good time to just kind of treat it like day one. From this point on, I'm going to do these things right with my emails. Step one is, of course, getting in that inbox. So I know there are a lot of retail small businesses out here. I understand there are a good number of small businesses here who are retail. 26% of retail emails bounce. Now, there's so much we can say about why that is. But just keep in mind that across all industries, the average bounce rate as of, I think, 2020 is 9%. So there's a lot of room there. We don't want our emails to bounce. We don't want your emails to end up in spam folders. But future opens do depend on that first send. So if you're struggling to get into an inbox, let's go to that very first send. What happens when someone signs up for your list, however they get on that? What happens? What's the first thing that happens? Now, that first email, not just the way you send it, but what's inside of it are huge. 81% of people are going to open your welcome email. 81%. And we've done so many email tests with so many different people across B2B, B2C, all that. And we've seen, that first email is huge. When you look at the graph of like opens across different companies, which we've done side by side and like overlays. And you can see right out of the gate that like that welcome email is huge. And then up till about day 4, you get really solid opens and then they drop off. But if you can get people to open that first email, then you're already doing really good things, right? So there's so much you can say, and you do not want to waste that first email, given that 81% of people that subscribe will be seeing that email. So what do? How do we actually write that welcome email? So these are some tips on what to do to make sure you get in the inbox rather than what content to put inside of your welcome email. The next 2 steps are really going to be about what content to put inside those emails. But the first thing is, make sure that the from name is a human name plus a brand, right? So ideally, you'll want to start to develop a one-to-one relationship with your subscribers. You might look at other things like, oh, J. Crew doesn't do that, or other companies don't do that. Why would I do that? But for small businesses in particular, you can really gain traction by being human, not just, this big brand. And it can feel like we're supposed to feel bigger than we are, but people do want to connect with you. And email is an incredible channel for getting people to connect. So it can be ideal for you to be like, okay, my name is Melissa, or my name's Chris, and I'm from that spa for kids that I saw earlier, whatever brand name you're from. So you put that at, and then you put your company name. Just make sure that there's like a human there, because then you can write one-to-one emails, but you also want to have a good match with your brand. If I just signed up for your brand and then I see it in my inbox, there's some memory there versus just having your name. So try to combine both of them. Okay. Second part of this in writing your welcome email is make sure, this is a big, tricky one. Make sure that the sender email address is on your domain name. And now maybe Ross will be able to talk more about this later or give you more insight here. But from a technical perspective, what I've got showing here on the screen, hopefully you can see it. Hopefully you're not watching on a phone, in which case this will be very hard to see. And you'll definitely want to go get the slides afterwards. But what we don't want to do is send via our email, like our CRM or our email service provider, as you can see at the top, we have Joe at Copy Hackers via, and then this thing for Active Campaign, which is what happens to be what we use. We don't want to do that. That's not good. That's not good. Google, Gmail doesn't like that. Outlook doesn't like that. People you're sending to, their inbox doesn't like that. What they like is an email from a person at a trusted domain. So a domain that's been around for longer than a month, let's say. And that's what we want to do. So Joe at Copy Hackers without the via part after it. It's called, if you want to Google SPF DKIM DMARC authentication, that's why it's in quotation marks there. Again, get the slides after if you're like, what is that? Just go Google it and it'll show you exactly what to do in your platform. So we want to do that. And then the third thing to keep in mind with that welcome email, which is again, so important, is to give your new subscriber a reason to hit reply and tell you something. Now, you may have already heard this before because people in email marketing like myself have been saying this for years, but it was often talked about as like, well, that's how you can start a relationship. And that's good. That's great. But then there's also a really clear technical reason to do this. So a reply, when someone hits reply to your email, that tells your new subscribers mailbox provider that you are not spam. So you don't have to give them a hard thing to do. Give them an easy thing to reply to. Just a yes, no question that you can ask them, or something that makes it really easy for them to hit reply, type out whatever that thing is and hit send to you. And now you're more likely to be recognized in their inbox. And if that's in Gmail, that might be, in the promotions tab still. Sometimes it'll get you into primary, but at least you won't land in spam, where we do not want to be ever. So 3 key things to do with that welcome email, which is again, so critical. Here are where those slides are one more time so you can see. I'm not going to show this link again, but it should be in the chat. Okay, step 1 is just landing in the inbox, and that's what we've just covered. Step 2, how do we actually write these emails? How do we write emails that people will love? How do we do that? Put the actual words into the email before we hit send. What happens there? How do I do it? We have found time and again, the absolute best way to write anything, including emails, is not to sit around thinking, what should I say? How should I say it? But like, just listen and use your customers or your prospects' words. And that we can talk if you have questions about like, well, my current customers may be different from my future customer. We can talk about that for sure. But the point here is, don't sit there thinking of what you should say, but what they need to hear. So a real question that a lot of us have when we're sitting down and staring at the screen and going, I have to write this email. How do we know what to write in an email? And that really clearly is just listen to your prospects, because they will tell you. Now, we call this voice of customer data. I'm going to reference VOC a couple times, probably through the rest of this. I'll try not to be too jargony about it. But what your customers say is just known as voice of customer data. You may already know that. Cool. If you don't, cool, now you do. VOC is what we're using to write emails. Now, this is what great copywriters will do. And this is what great small business owners will do. And it actually makes your life so much easier because you don't have to guess. You can just listen to what your customers and prospects say and mirror it right back to them on the page. It will make you feel like you're not doing the work like that. That was too easy though. Is this really allowed? It's really allowed. You can really do it. Now, how do we go about collecting VOC? We have entire programs. Our entire copy school is like, here's what to do to go listen, and here's how to document, and then here's what to do with it. So I'm not going to tell you everything to do in all the ways. I'm going to focus on one way, but here are a bunch of things that you can do to go listen for voice of customer data. So we've got obvious, great stuff, pretty obvious, great stuff off to the side. And then on the right is what copywriters like yours truly love to add. So interviewing customers, maybe you're already interviewing customers, which hopefully you are. You don't need to interview a lot. 5 to 7 customers every 4 to 6 months can be plenty, can feed you with so much VOC data that you can use for the rest of that quarter or that half of the year. If you have customer surveys, let's say you're already doing them, maybe you add a lot. You currently have like a lot of quantitative questions in there, like demographic stuff, and things that are really easy for them to just select. Just try adding in some qualitative as well, because it's the qualitative questions where You'll actually hear people in the real words say what's going on for them, what was going on in their life that brought them to choose you, things like that. On-site polls, pretty good too. Audits, I'm not going to get into all of these. We've got also the stuff that the copywriters love to add. Interviewing the founding team. Now you might be the founder, in which case maybe have somebody interview you, or you just actually think aloud about what was going on for you that caused you to start this business, and like hit record on your phone and just talk about it. Spend time interviewing yourself and then listen back for any interesting data. You won't only use that. You'll want to like triangulate the data, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have to really spend too much time on that. You just don't want to use a single source, especially if that single source is just you. A lot of other cool things to do are like online review mining. If you are selling online, you're getting reviews, they're authentic reviews rather than sometimes, reviews can be pretty tricky. There's really good voice of customer in there as well. So lots of things you can do. Now, what I'm going to talk about here with an example is based on mining sales call recordings. And you might be like, Joe, I don't do sales calls like at all. That's okay. What this will do is show you how to listen to what people are saying in any of these other ways showing here on the screen right now, in order to pull out what you need to use to write that email, because your customers and prospects are going to say a lot of words. And not all of them are gems. Not all of them are things that you're going to want to pull out and push onto the page, but some of them are. We're going to talk about that. So the following example, the one I'm going to use for this step 2 of this 3-step process, is for a technical company called GitPrime. Now I say technical rather than technology because it's very, very techy. So when I show you some examples here on the screen, it might be kind of eyes glaze over because we're talking about GitPrime measures how engineers are performing. It's now called Flow by Pluralsight, by the way. But we're going to talk about things that are just techie. And so don't let that get in the way. Just kind of sub in your brain how you could listen to what your own customers and prospects are saying. So this example, I'm going to walk you through how we wrote this. I'm going to show you exactly how we put these words down in this exact order. How did we write it? This is the email that we're working toward. It doesn't actually cut off there. It's much longer. You'll actually see for most of our emails, we write more words than you might already be comfortable writing. And we can talk about that if you have any concerns. But I think step 3 will help you understand why it's important to put the right words on the page and not hold back on putting as many as need to be used. Okay, so how did we actually write this email? How do we write emails? In this case, I'm talking about mining sales call recordings. So here, this is chorus.ai. This is the interface. That's where sales demos typically happen for a lot of tech companies. Again, this might be just reading through surveys or listening to your customers talk, or if you do a customer interview on Zoom like this, then it's just going back and listening to what they were saying, where they were pausing, watching their face, hopefully to get a sense for like where things get interesting for them, but looking at your customers and listening to your customers as they talk. If you have your notepad open, it can be hugely enlightening. So you don't have to read through these notes. Don't worry. This is just to show you the depth of the notes that we get into. Write down, honestly, your job when you're writing copy, writing an email is to be a researcher, right? You're going to listen with curiosity about like what this person is thinking. And the more curious you are, the more satisfied you actually will be, because you're going to learn a lot. We have notes and notes and notes and notes that come out of this. Really simply, I don't have a fancy tool for this. I have my ears, I have a notepad, and I type what I'm hearing. I put what they're saying that I find really interesting. I put it in quotation marks. And if I have a reaction to what they're saying or an idea that comes out of it, I put it in all caps. And that way, when I'm going back through and looking at my notes, as you can see lots of notes here, I know, oh, that's exact VOC data over here. That's exactly the phrasing that the customer used. And here is an insight that I took away from it. So I can start to make sense of all those notes. But that's just shorthand. Do whatever works for you. The point here is to listen and to note. Repeated specific and or unusual phrasing. So a lot of people will say things that you could think up yourself, right? And that you don't need to worry about, like anything you could come up with in a boardroom or just sitting at your desk typing, you don't really need to worry about, right? Like you'll come up with that on your own. It's the interesting insights like, oh, I hadn't realized that was something that you thought. And of course, the less you know about your customer, the more eye-opening phrasing you're bound to hear. So for me, because I don't measure engineers for a living, when I was listening to people talk about Git Prime and like watch this demo, when they said things like what's going on under the hood, they said that a lot. So I noted that, right? Why do engineering managers keep saying what's going on under the hood? Maybe this is some jargon that would be a bit of like a dog whistle phrase when they see it in an email. It might be like, oh, these people get me because they use the same jargon I do. Other really specific things I noted here, like in quotation marks again, a line was when someone commits 1,000 lines right before the weekend and it dies on the vine. Okay, I don't know what that means. I'm going to have to learn what that means, but it's interesting and I'm going to write it down. And then, well, it's hard to know who the bottleneck is. That just kept coming up a lot too. So these are a couple examples out of all of those notes that I showed you. We had a lot more that came out of it, but just for the purposes of showing you what you're really looking for, hopefully that makes sense, makes it clear. So what you pull out of what they say, then what do you do with it? It goes into a persuasion framework. So there's really two steps here: listen and then push it into a proven persuasion framework. So this is where copywriting comes in, right? This is where you actually make it come together in convincing, compelling ways. So there are lots of persuasion frameworks out there. I have my own favorites, and you don't need to know all of the persuasion frameworks. I use something called PAS. I'm going to walk you through it. So you're like, what's a persuasion framework? I'm about to walk you through it. Don't worry. But PAS is the one I recommend you start with, fall in love with, do your best to fall in love with, and use all the time, because no one will notice that you're using PAS except for me. If I read and I go like, oh, damn, they're using PAS. That's awesome. But your customers will not notice if you use it again and again and again and again. So you just need a single framework. Don't worry about overthinking this. You can write every email by opening with their problem, then moving into the next and then into the next. And I'll show you what those are right now. But P stands for problem. So you listen to what your prospect's problem is. In this case, it was our code keeps dying on the vine. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Okay. And then the next step is agitation. So you open with the problem and then you agitate it. Now, this is the part that most people are scared of. They tend to cut this part out because they're like, ooh, it's making me feel things. Are we spending too much time making people feel things? No, you're not. You can't spend too much time making me feel something. That's how I buy. I buy based on that. So agitating that problem, in this case, the problem is agitated with things like all these big PRs go unreviewed. There's like a dozen dev hours that are lost. And of course, you could then do the math for people on that, where they really start to feel like, oh yeah, this is a big problem. And then comes the solution. So you've opened with their problem, you made them feel it by agitating it, and then you get into the solution. So in this case, if only I could see what's going on in my engineering team, that's the best solution to the problem, which helps us introduce the product. Okay, I've got like 10 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly show you how this comes together here. Now, this is that email I showed you up front. We have problem, agitation, solution. When you're writing an email like this, open up a Google Doc, write problem, then hit enter a bunch of times, then agitation, and enter a bunch of times, then solution, and enter a bunch of times. And then you want to just copy and paste in from that VOC data, just like paste it under those sections. Et voila, you have the strong beginning to an email. Now, I'm not going to read through the whole email. In this case, I'm just going to show you where those phrases off to the left actually appear in the copy itself. So you can see that we've just put those right in there. And again, everything showing here right now on the screen, that whole email is just stitched together, VOC, put into the PAS framework. So basically everything else there is also pulled from VOC, but if I had showed you all of those, you'd have like 12 different VOC notes off to the side. You'd be like, Joe, that's too much. So this is just representative of how we get there. Okay. So we have covered step one. You got to get in that inbox, or no matter what you write, it doesn't matter because they won't read it. Step two, use their words and then put them in a persuasion framework. Now, step 3 is the part where you kind of get to have fun, right? So I've shown you like the formulas, the things you must do. But the next part is like, just stop being scared. I can't tell you how many email copywriters we talk to, definitely small business owners, startup founders who are scared to hit send on an email. They're scared that someone will hit reply and go, this was dumb, or anything. And people will. People have written back to me when I've sent out an email and we get a reply email. And in one case, someone wrote to me, this is overwritten guff. And I remember it, but it doesn't stop me from sending another email that someone might call overwritten guff as well, because so many other people don't think of it that way. So don't worry. If you're at all worried about hitting send on an email, just stop being scared. Give yourself the next 3 months to stop being scared of email. Just stop. And if after that you're like, no, I still need to be scared, fine, go back, but try it for a little while. And the reason for this is like email, as I've mentioned, is, such an incredible channel for generating sales and retaining those customers. And we're often worried. We're too worried about like, oh no, what if my competition steals my customer away because I sent them an email that had too many words in it. Most sales are not going to be lost because you sent an email that was too long or because you didn't send an email. Most sales are lost due to no decision, right? So this has been a stat that's been out for a while. You need to use email to help your customer decide whether in the end they decide, no, I'm not going to go with this, or they decide, yes, I'm going to, but they need to make a decision. That's your job. That's what your copy is there to do. And we need to keep in mind as senders, a way to not be scared is to be aware of just how crazy the lives of our customers are. So have deep empathy for like what's going on for them. They do want to get an email from you. If they don't, they'll unsubscribe. They signed up to get the email, or if they automatically sign up along like in your cart, they had to check a box to say, yes, send me more. So they want to hear from you, but they also want to live their lives. They've got all this stuff going on, right? Like if I'm on my phone, where most people do open emails, a lot of people open emails, especially for B2C. So I'm like living my life. I'm on a hike. I've got my app open, trying to figure out where to go on this incredible hike. And then this email comes in from my video host, Wistia. And it's some illustration. It says customize your player on it. My most natural thing to do is to go back to what I was doing, because this is not really trying very hard. If I give it a little bit of time, even to read it, it's not trying very hard. I'm going to walk you through more about this so you can understand what I mean. But I want to just be interested in my life. I want my life to be good. Don't make my life worse. So we want to dare to be interesting. This is how we stop being scared. Just give it a shot. Try to be interesting. Dare to show empathy, to know that your prospect has a million other things on the go. They're willing to open your email and read it. Hot damn, you had better spend some time making sure that this is going to be interesting and that they'll actually read your email. If they're opening it, this is your chance to get them to read it and take action. So for the last 5 minutes of this talk, I'm going to show you how we did this for Wistia. That was the little example that I showed you earlier. Wistia is a video hosting company. Maybe people here use it. We love Wistia. We worked with them a couple years ago on this exact campaign. This is an automated sequence for people who are good leads. They've already done something inside the software. So this was an 8 email series that brought in 3.5 times the paid conversion. So we're not talking it increased clicks by 350%. We're talking it increased paid conversions by 350%. As in, if they were making $1,000 a day before this, it bumped up to $3,500 a day after this. So it's a good thing. And I'm going to show you how we got to this place. And it's really quite simple, how to get your emails to perform better when you're working on the copy. Okay, so this is an example of one of their emails. Meet Wistia customer ZBlue, then there's some copy, then there's this image and some button. Now, my question always is when I'm looking at an email, like without the picture, without that photo, what would be there for your prospect? What would they see? Are you making your prospect do all sorts of reading text that they don't care about, and then naturally looking for the image because they're bored by everything else? So if we look at something like this, what's really going on? Now, what I would like you to do, I can't see you, but I'm going to ask you for a little audience participation. I've not got many minutes left to do this in, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm going to, when I tell you, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and then I'm going to read this copy to you. And all I want you to do is listen for, just not listen hard for it, just let the copy, just let it enter your head, just come through your ears, sit inside your brain a bit, and any pictures that come to mind, I want you to note them, just any pictures that come to mind at all. And then I'll tell you when to open your eyes, and then I'll ask you like what pictures came to mind. And I do have Q&A or chat open, so I might be able to see if you can chat me over. All right, close your eyes. Just do it. I can't see you, but just do it, okay? Okay, here we go. There are a lot of creative ways to grow your business with video. Collecting email addresses is an easy way to fill your database with sales-ready leads. We thought you'd enjoy reading how ZBlue, a digital marketing firm, collects leads with video for their client, the Santa Barbara Chicken Ranch, and uses coupons to connect with their customers. Okay, open your eyes. Now, did any pictures come to mind? Did you see anything in your mind's eye whatsoever? I'm going to try to, people are chatting, but I can't get to it. So typically, I'm trying so hard, my cursor like won't go over it. But typically, because I've done this like 2 or 3 times before on this one, typically what comes to mind, maybe I'm right and I just can't see it, is like chicken ranch. People see that. Some people say database and some people say coupons, but like chicken is the one thing that really comes to mind as people are going through this or listening to it. And so you think about that and think like, well, so the only thing they can see is the most literal noun possible. Can't we do more? And yes, we can and should do more. We absolutely should do more. Words are supposed to create pictures, right? We all know this going into it. Words are supposed to engage our imagination, and they can do that. Like the most obvious example is Harry Potter, but we can do this in our marketing copy as well. I'm a huge Mad Men fan. So Don Draper in season 6, episode 4, if you love Don Draper like I do, flawed though he was, I'm going to read this. The greatest thing you have working for you is not the photo you take or the picture you paint. It's the imagination of the consumer. They have no budget. They have no time limit. And if you can get into that space, your ad can run all day. So yes, a picture can be a great thing. And a lot of us are depending on sending emails that are really visual because we're scared no one will read us, will read anything that we have to say. But a few words allow your prospect to have things come to mind for them. So although a picture is worth 1,000 words, just hearing a few words can create this unimaginable picture in their brain. For example, if I say, she chased the kite through the street, everybody's going to see something that's a little bit different and more true to them. What you see in your brain is true to your life experience. Instead of if I put a picture up there of someone who may not look like what you would see when I say this, the roll of toilet paper was empty. Any number of things could be happening in a person's life if this is a statement that is said, right? And so we have to allow our prospects to be able to read our words and imagine things and have our brand become part of their imagination. Now that might feel lofty, but it does start with just not being scared to use your words. Just fall in love with your prospect's imagination. Dare to believe they will read your email. Now I know I'm out of time, so I'm not going to get too deeply into the next version. You can go through and read this copy after. What I will show you is what's coming to life in variation 2. Now this is the email that was tested against that one I just read to you, where like chicken was the #1 picture that came to mind. We don't want that because we're not selling chickens here. If we were, that'd be great, but we're not. And so here's what, you'll see, hopefully there'll be word pictures like switch on, helps people like visualize a switch, more word pictures happening down there, connecting the dots on how a concept works and exactly how to start using it. So do go back through and take a look at this if you get the slides, but the real takeaway is use their words and then bring their imagination into it. Okay, so that brings us to land in the inbox, use their words, stop being scared, and then finally, final note, 1 minute for this, please, let yourself have fun. So one final example for you, just for some inspiration. I don't know if you saw this years ago, Donors Choose sent this out. The email went, roses are red, violets are blue, donate to a teacher with the same name as you. And that ended up looking something like this. So my name's Joanna Wiebe, and I would get matched with Mr. Wiebe, who needed $68 in order to get French novels for his junior high students. And the outcome of this was incredible. People were 3 times more likely to give to a project when it was personalized. They gave 3 times as much, and it reactivated lapsed donors. So have fun with it. You know you're supposed to do segmentation. You know you're supposed to do all these things that I've shared with you today. But at the same time, people want to read your emails and like them too. So go ahead and have a little fun with it. That is all from me. Thanks for letting me go over time.
All right, Ross, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sahara. That's awesome. And by the way, I have to say thank you as well, Joanna. I really love the donors choose example. That was super creative. And I should note as well that I also use a lot of survey data personally, both for what I do here at Campaign Monitor and what I do for not-for-profits. Both for email and for presentation content. It's really like impossible to downplay how useful it is to listen to your customers via things like surveys or the conversations you have if you take, detailed notes, and use their language and their concerns in your own communications. So that was an awesome tip. But all right, let's move on. Hi, everyone. This has just been amazing, by the way. I just love that we've got hundreds of people here and chat has been going wild. So really do keep it up. I am really, really grateful that you're joining us here today for sending effective email newsletters. And I know we had a little intro at the beginning, but just to reiterate, my name is Roz, and I'm from the customer experience team at Campaign Monitor. And in this 10-minute session, it's going to be short and sweet. We're going to be sharing some tips and best practices for creating attractive and effective email newsletters, regardless of the email software you're using. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road. And don't forget, we are going to have a Q&A after this, so do keep your questions coming, and Sahara is going to do an amazing job sharing them with us to answer. So quick pluggable, what is Campaign Monitor, guys? First of all, I have to say it is an application. It's online for creating and sending email newsletters, and then reporting on the results, which is also super important too. And it is loved by 2 million marketers at 250,000 businesses around the world. And because we're really wanting you to focus on engaging your audience using some of Joanna's techniques and some of the ones that we'll be talking about here too, we want you to basically use our drag and drop email builder instead of coding all day to create some of designs like these. Using our templates, you can create anything from simple newsletters to really creative and eye-catching product announcements. And the very cool thing is that you can try it and you can also send your first emails for free. So the place to go for that is campaignmonitor.com. So when I was looking at some of the questions that were coming through to the Tory Burch team ahead of this presentation, I did see one that really stood out. And I was like, how do I get someone's attention, especially when everyone is inundated with emails? And this is a question that comes up quite a lot, especially at this time of year leading into the holidays. The good news is that we do really have the advantage here. The people who subscribe to your email newsletters, they go to your website and they sign up, or they make a purchase and they sign up for your email list. They actually do want to receive your newsletter. According to Nielsen research, when consumers were asked how they like to receive updates from a brand, 90% actually chose email newsletters. And the fact is, you do have a great story to tell about your product, your people, your culture, and your motivations. And people do want to read it, especially if you use some of Joanna's tips to make it super compelling. But that said, it's all about execution. I mean, do your emails create curiosity? Do they create emotion? Are you using some of Joanna's tips, using that voice of customer data? Are the emails themselves easy to read? And that's a big one too. And do they compel people to take action? So let's look at some of the email newsletters that our customers are sending, paired with some of the best practices they're using to drive engagement. And first of all, let's start off with the subject line. The subject line really is one of the most critical parts of an email. It's what gets your email opened. Your email open rate is a direct reflection of how engaged your email list is, but also if you've been able to convince your audience to open and read your email. So, in short, it's funny I'm going to say this, a good subject line is short, yes. It's really concise and specific. And, it really tells your readers what the email is about. I'm not a fan of sort of bait and switch. I mean, I like having subject lines that, kind of get people super curious, but I really appreciate subject lines that give people an idea for what's actually in the email. So we've picked out a few examples in the slide because they have these qualities, but also they demonstrate other cool techniques like, you guessed it, using emoji. So when appropriate, emoji are a great way to draw attention. In fact, 92% of internet users are using emoji. They're super familiar, in part because they can break language barriers and express emotion in short form messaging. And we know they work. About 56% of brands who do use emoji in their subject lines have reported a higher unique open rate, according to research that we've done. Also, there's picking up on recent events, and we find that emails triggered by events, such as a download or a visit to your brick and mortar store, can capitalize on the recipient's recent engagement. According to Experian, triggered or transactional emails can generate 8 times more opens and clicks, not to mention 6 times more revenue than traditional email newsletters. So that's one thing to think about too, not just sending a traditional email newsletter, but how can you have emails send at opportune times when someone is really still engaged in the brand, in the purchasing process or similar. Finally, and this kind of harks back to the previous conversation a bit too, the presentation I should say, personalizing the subject line with the recipient's name or company demonstrates a personal relationship and really can boost your open rate. Paired with Joanna's advice to use a real name as your from name, you can make your email really compelling in the inbox. What we know is that emails with personalized subject lines are 26% more likely to be opened, according to our research. But don't get ahead of yourself just yet. We're not just going to throw reams of words on the page just yet. I really recommend that before you even start writing the content of the body of your newsletter, the first step is really to decide on a goal. This will really help guide what content you're going to include and how you're going to lay it out. So it is important to get organized here. When you're planning content for your newsletter, it's good to keep in mind that, the people that read your newsletter are busy. And so it's really just important to focus on that number one action, that goal that you have in mind, that you want people to do. And then organize your content to ensure that it's easy to read the content, to comprehend it, and then actually carry out that goal in the end. So we always recommend getting organized by having your content in sections, similar to something like a newspaper, with clear sections and a good content hierarchy. Your recipients can scan the titles and images for content that's of interest to them. It's what we call really building a visual hierarchy. You can see in this example here that with the sort of previews on the right-hand side in that email, there's almost like a triangle that leads down to that read more button. This we find super compelling because, the goal here is to get someone to read more, to click through to the website and actually read the full article in the browser instead of in the inbox. And so thinking about how to achieve that goal of getting people to click through is super important. So this is actually a newsletter from Livingly. And, I have to say just the way that it's organized for easy parsing and having those really clear read more buttons is, very clear. It's descriptive and it's very familiar to readers too. We all know what read more means. So once you've got people to open your email and they're starting to read around and that kind of thing, really just, again, we really have to talk about compelling people towards clicking or tapping. Really getting readers to click is key. And there's, 2 reasons for this. First of all, it's going to allow them to explore your content. in an environment that's better designed for it. I mean, namely, if you click through and then go through to your website and read a blog, you can actually have video in there, you can have some eye-catching images, and then compel people to read other things on your blog. I mean, it's really just one of those, it's a very, very intuitive experience for people to click through and actually use, say, a browser or Facebook, somewhere outside of the crowded inbox to read more long-form messaging and interact. The other thing is too, and Joanna was talking about this when we were talking about authentication, is that authentication is one thing, driving engagement is another. The more that, say, Gmail and Yahoo and all that see people clicking and interacting and engaging and replying to your emails, the more likely it's going to be that your emails will get delivered to the inbox in the future. So it's super, super important. So overall, I think that, the other thing that seems super obvious, I guess, is that, the CTA or call to action, they should be short. They should be like read more. They should preferably contain a verb. That's one thing, like actually a doing word to drive people to action. And better still, maybe even create emotion or a sense of urgency. The text does also have to be large enough to read easily, but not so large to be considered obnoxious. Remember that there are a number of devices that people read email on these days. They could read it in an Outlook or Gmail, but they could also be reading it on their iPad or their mobile phone. So you do want to make sure that there's a degree of legibility as well. Buttons in particular, like the read more here, are great for mobile because they make tapping much easier. There's something, I'm sure we've all had an experience where we've been on our phone and we've seen a link that we want to, click to, see something in mobile Safari. And it's just been really, really hard because the text is small. Well, buttons sort of make that whole thing much, much, much easier. And then I'm going to say there is really no ultimate call to action, that will work for every email. So above all, just test things like, the colors of your links and buttons, the placement, the text you're using, style, all those things you can test using email marketing software by doing A/B testing, or, just simply using your own customer's language and seeing if that works out well. So next up, we're going to talk about using images. So, the good thing about email is it's a very visual medium as well, and you can use eye-catching and relevant images to boost reader engagement, as well as to excite their imagination. Images can be just as important as the copy in an email newsletter, really, and research shows that content with relevant images tends to get, 94% more views. So, one thing I can really say, and we've all heard this before, is that, images are really good at creating attention, drawing readers in, and can tell a story when you don't have space for 1,000 words. So one little thing I should mention is that Campaign Monitor's email builder does have a library of 2 million free images from Unsplash that you can just throw into your email newsletter. So you can really just double down on making sure that you're telling a great story, that your email copy is really effective, and just find images along the way. It's super easy. So just a final note, this newsletter here is from our customer Apartment Therapy. First of all, I just love the images. They look super natural. They're crisp, they're clear. They're directly related to the article that you can see here. And for mobile devices, the one column layout is super clear. You might have also seen this when you've been on your mobile device, browsing your email, that you could have newsletters that have multiple column widths. It's really difficult to read a 3-column layout that isn't optimized for mobile. There are lots of really great techniques you could use, or, use email builders that'll automatically make your email newsletter responsive. But when in doubt, a 1-column layout works really, really well. So I'm going to wrap up this section here by just with a little word of advice, and it's similar to what Joanna was talking about earlier. And that is simply to only write emails that you want to read yourself. And if you think one audience needs a different type of message from another, then you should really think about how you can segment or sort of break up your contacts or emails or your audience into groups. And those sort of groups can be by geographic location. They can be by purchase behavior. Did someone make a purchase in the last week versus never made a purchase? Or even by star sign, if you want to have a little bit of fun with that. Really, it's just all a way to get people to relate and pay attention to your story. So if you do want to learn more about sending email newsletters, from the very basics up to something more advanced, I really invite you to take a look at Email Academy. I personally authored this as well as my team, and it's totally platform agnostic. We're not pushing Campaign Monitor or anything like that. It's all about learning. And it's a great place to learn how to create, write, and design email newsletters, segment your audience, and even optimize your emails and your email strategy to land in the inbox more often. And you could be using Outlook, or you could be using Oracle. It doesn't matter what kind of email platform you're using. We've got some tips that are applicable to all. So go check it out, academy.campaignmonitor.com. And now, Sahara, thank you for this opportunity. Over to you.
Great, Roz, thank you. So we have a couple minutes and there's been quite a few questions in the chat. And so I'm going to try to pick ones that I think will be relevant for the whole group. But Sally actually asked a great question to kick us off, and a very timely question around Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and asked how many emails should we be getting over the course of Black Friday, or should we be sending, excuse me, over the course of Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Is there such a thing as too many emails? Maybe I'll pose that one to you, Joe. What are your thoughts there?
Sure. Yeah, no, this is great. So typically what we see for ourselves and with our clients is launch day and last day are the two biggies, right? So you want to optimize to send those days. And for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we also don't see segmentation outperform non-segmentation, like because offer is everything during Black Friday. People are looking in their inbox for sales. So don't overthink it too much, but I recommend at least 2 emails on launch day. Now, if you launch on Thanksgiving, then probably 2 emails on Thanksgiving, 2 on Black Friday, then 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and 2 to 3 on Cyber Monday. Just really like those sales will come in on the first day and the last day, and everything in between is just to kind of like keep the momentum in there. Yeah.
Roz, do you have anything to add? I saw you nodding.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really good. Actually, it reminded me of a tweet that I saw not that long ago, which is like, in regards to Black Friday, send me 5 emails today, but only 5 in total for the rest of the year. Like, that's how a lot of consumers are thinking about this. And I think that what's really important here is to really get organized. I mean, I think at this time, this is the perfect time, like right now, today, to create a sending calendar and just think about how we can not have it be so lopsided. But then also, to have written down some of your holiday milestones. There are things that a lot of people don't think about until the last minute, like the final shipping date before, to make sure that things arrive in time for the holidays, right? Especially now we're having supply chain issues. Everybody is like, really, what can people expect as far as fulfillment times go? So, I mean, one thing is certainly like the launch emails. Yes. But if we're also trading in physical goods, also think what kind of emails we need to send leading up to some of the key dates, because, it's always hard dealing with people writing in, oh, my thing didn't arrive on time. But I think that it doesn't all have to be focused on the holiday date. We can definitely spread it out in the weeks prior. There isn't a hard and fast number necessarily, but I do like that idea of making sure launch dates are well acknowledged.
That's great. 2 questions here are kind of similar. So for a lot of our folks on the phone, they're small businesses. And so if they can't quite afford a copywriter yet, do you recommend using any type of AI copywriting sites?
Ooh, Joanna, what's your experience been there?
Yeah, no, I'm in no way against AI copywriting. Just keep your expectations low and use it as a first draft. That's all. So, and I also don't think, until you're quite large, you should be writing your own copy across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
It's you'll care about it more than any copywriter you could afford anyway. So just do it. But yeah, no, it's AI copywriting gets you 60% of the way there. It's just, you don't want to leave that last 40%. So do your work on that and it'll save you some time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then for folks who are, looking to hire a copywriter, what are some of the questions they should ask when evaluating, especially freelance copywriters or different content agencies?
I'll jump in there too, because we work with so many of them and we get people writing to us saying like, do you know anybody who can do X? I would ask them what their process is. That's typically a good filter if they don't even think about process and you're like, so yeah, that would be the number one question to filter out people who haven't done this before. And then just really talk to them honestly about, particularly for email, like just talk to them about show them your email and like, here's what we've got. What do you think? Sorry if this feels like a free consult, but help me understand. And most good copywriters will be like, oh, for sure. Yeah, let's talk about this. So those are two quick ways to tell a good one from a bad one. If they're really inexpensive, they're probably, I know that sounds silly to like have it, because you can have an expensive one that's terrible too. But if they're quite inexpensive, if it feels too good to be true, in this case, it is. Yeah.
Fair enough. Roz, I'll pose this question to you. Are there any key differences for writing copy for product-based businesses versus service-based businesses? Do we tend to see a difference in what their emails look like? Joanna, is there a copy that should be different? Curious, because we definitely have a mix of people on this call.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Joanna, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, I hear people talking more about the distinguishing between B2C, business to consumer, versus B2B, business to business, not so much making a big distinction between, products and services. I think the one thing that we do see though is that the services ones do take a much more personal touch. They have a much more personal tone because, it is all about the relationship with the individual in the way that most products can't really achieve. So, we have a lot of people that work for things like day spas, they work for therapy, that kind of thing, where a lot of it is really prioritizing human contact and making people feel safe, making people feel heard. It's much more empathetic language than maybe what you would have for a product, where it's really about the utility. What sort of problems is the product trying to solve for the individual by, there's some good, actually, Joanna, you mentioned a really good one, like, talking about in the past sort of model, like, is there something that product can really fulfill that's really upsetting people or not saying upsetting, but how can it improve people's life and solve a problem? So, I think that really just from my experience with, some of these really successful customers and services, there's just a lot more scope for really having empathy and emphasizing human connection, especially now when people really miss it.
Yeah.
Joanna, how about you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'll just add, mostly for the sake of time, like just remember you're writing to humans. Yes. So B2B or B2C, the decision maker is a human. They're not as scary as you think they are. They want their lives to be easier. Just show them how you make it easier. If it takes 1,000 words and they're engaging because it's like, you're in my head, like you get me, then I'll read every word of it. But if you can do it in 100 words and still do it like you get me, then cool. And that's across the board for B2B and B2C. Just they're humans. Don't be afraid of them. They want to like what you're sending them.
Great. That's great. Well, we could go on and on. There's so many more questions, and I'm sorry that we didn't get the opportunity to get to more, but Joanna and Roz, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our community today. We really appreciate it.